Arcade Heroes.
Get ready!
Greetings, it's Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com, and I meant to get this video out a couple of days ago, but there's been so much news starting to come along that I'm going to just wrap several things up into once. Uh, Probably not the best strategy for how YouTube works, but whatever. We're here to talk about brand new arcade games, or at least upcoming arcade games that you might be able to find out there soon, depending on the location. The one that we're going to start with, it's very much up in the air. This one is definitely coming to Japan, but I don't know for certain at this point if it would be coming to the United States or North America. As generally, it's US and Canada that most of those releases would be getting to. But anyways, for some or many of you out there, you probably know what this is, or at least the IP, and that would be Demon Slayer. And with the recent film, I believe, topping records and becoming the most watched, highest earning anime film of all time, not just in Japan, but across the world. It goes to show why certain companies might be interested in doing more with that. And of course, there have been video games of Demon Slayer, at least two of them that I know of, on consoles. This is the first one that would be coming to arcades. Now, this is being done by Konami. That's where it's a slight wild card as to whether or not this would see any attention here out west. From the cabinet design, as we don't have any real details on this yet, and we don't have any video footage of how it works, can just make some educated guesses off of this, but to definitely Ben's cards, as you can see those in the kind of the sub marquee there. There's also the slots at the bottom where you can get the card from, and those sorts of games are pretty popular in Japan. They've been getting some attention here out west in recent times, but not to the same level that they do in Japan, and also generally not with the same game operation. So stuff like Injustice Arcade or Minecraft Dungeons Arcade tends to play differently than the a lot of these card vending games over in Japan. Now, of course, there has been stuff like Animal Kaiser Plus from Bandai Namco, but that is designed for kids. I would say that, at least from what I've seen, a lot of these games operate on a simpler level, more like redemption games. Not entirely. They're not necessarily 10 seconds long as some redemption games are, but still they're simplified compared to what you would expect from a full-blown arcade game, so to speak. But this appears to have a joystick controller that's shaped like a samurai sword hilt, and I again, this doesn't look like it's something that you can detach from the cabinet. As far as the gameplay goes, they did release a screenshot where you can see that it seems to have some sort of directional gameplay, like push in this direction, almost maybe a little bit like Star Wars Trilogy Arcade on the lightsaber battle sequences, or maybe it's more like DDR, where it's just maybe that bubble fills, and when it gets to the edges, you need to push it within that time, and then use your water breathing technique or fire breathing or whatever it might be that pertains to the game. Now, one caveat that also throws this into the wild card category is the fact that Konami has been looking at re-entering the North American market with their arcade division, at least since last year, where they were at a major trade show, which we'll talk about here in a moment. And then earlier this year, I also saw some information about them uh, looking to get into distribution, and at least this list I saw, it had dates for when different Konami games would become available, not just to say Round One USA, where they've had a partnership with Round One for quite a while, now, but other people who operate arcades would actually be able to grab, say, like the latest DDR or even Sound Voltex and other V-Money games were on the list from what I saw. And so if that pans out, where Konami really does set up their or gets their arcade division fully operating here again, then yeah, then there is a possibility they could end up bringing this over. And they've also been testing out quite a few games lately, although these tests have been at Round One USA, and so uh, it just remains to be seen what happens with Konami there. But I would put it into the maybe category, whereas in the past I would have said no chance other than maybe a round one appearance. But that's not all. Let's check out over here at Exa-Arcadia where they've had some announcements lately. And so I already did a video on Hunter x Hunter Nin Impact. I learned you're not supposed to pronounce the X or cross there. But they've begun shipping another fighting game. And so they've been doing a lot of fighting games lately. In the past, there have been times where they did a lot of shoot 'em up games. But Vanguard Princess R is now available worldwide. That's one thing to always, I guess, bring up about X-Arcadia is that all of their games are available all over the planet. It's not just Japan, even though they do have a strong marketing focus in Japan. Uh, any of these games, like I have several X-Arcadia games at my own arcade and stuff. So if you're into all-girl enemy fighting games, then and this one I can't remember the exact history on this. Was this one of those from I think 2009? Can't recall. The original one on PC has been fully remastered, improved upon. This has been worked on by FK Digital, who's known for Chaos Code, and so they're definitely uh, really improving in what they're or expanding the breadth of the games that they've been working on, but also developed by X-Arcadia. X-Arcadia is not just publishing, but they're doing a lot of development work, and so they make sure that these games work out great. But also, Axel City 2: The Final Storm is supposed to start shipping within the next week or two, and then there'll be other fighting games that they will be releasing soon. So if this one isn't your cup of tea, don't worry, they have several others that might be your cup of tea. And as I mentioned on a blog post about this, it's important to um, support these. Like, if you really want fighting arcade games to make a comeback in the industry, then you need to support it, not through just liking posts or whatever, or just complaining online, but like actually going and essentially campaigning at your local arcade if you happen to have one for them to get that. And then if they do, you need to actually go and support it. Don't just show up once and play it and call it a day. But if they see that the game earns, that incentivizes them to buy more. And so, or if they already have an existing fighting game, go and support that. And then they're like, hey, maybe there's something behind these fighting games. Maybe we should get a new one. And of course, if they hear that from multiple customers, then they're more likely to do that. Next up, in other games that have been released and are debuting soon, or at least debuting at a trade show where you can play them, there's a new version of Perfect Pour that is available through DSM Arcade, who created the original Perfect Pour, which was released earlier this year in March. And it's a concept that has essentially resurrected the idea behind Midway's Tapper, but implemented it in a different, unique way that still maintains a similar feel to Tapper, but it's its own unique game. And now you can get Perfect Pour if you run an arcade bar with the Pabst Blue Ribbon brand attached to it, and so it'll also have different backgrounds and such. Now, if you haven't played Perfect Pour, this is very much designed for arcade bars or just bars, even if they don't have a lot of arcade machines. It would still be a good thing to put into your bar to entertain your customers, where you have four tap joysticks and you just pull it back to fill the glass and it serves the virtual customer on the screen. You want to do that as quickly and as accurately as possible. If you get all the way straight to the top, you get a perfect pour, and that gives you more points, and you can stack and multiply that bonus but you have to be careful not to overfill it and spill. Also, don't want to underserve customers. There's boss battles and such. The game has a classic mode and then a timed mode. The time mode is if you want to have faster play, and so it would just I think it's limited to 3 minutes. Whereas in the classic mode, it's more like a traditional arcade game where you can keep playing if you're good at it and such. And there's boss battles and whatnot. But this is a great option. I am often wanting to uh, incentivize arcade bars if I can, if there's some way that I can, to grab some of the newer stuff instead of the older stuff. I mean, I understand the desire to have older stuff. I have older games at my arcade, but as I've pointed out before in several videos, retro doesn't earn. And even the ones that do the best, they're not paying your bills. And with a lot of arcade bars just focusing on retro, unless it's pinball, then or an alley bowler like skee ball, that you're really hurting yourself. And if you want to see improved profits from your game side and not just your drink side, then getting something newer like this, which is affordable. This is more affordable than a pinball machine is, and it will earn better than a pinball machine will, especially from the numbers that I've heard about the regular Perfect Four. I've been hearing that it's in the top three. Oftentimes, it is the top earning game at arcade bars that have it. I mean, this one where it has Pabst, if you're serving that, then gonna do even better. Or if you even happen to have the rare Pabst pinball crusher machine that Stern released about a decade ago, um, it would be a good addition there. But these are under $5,000. They're a little bit more than a regular Perfect Pour, but I think with that branding, it would be worth to spend that extra few $100s on it. And again, I highly, highly recommend from a business perspective to have newer content, and especially where I don't always get this arbitrary line that a lot of our bar operators or arcade operators draw, where they're like, well, I'm not going to have any game that was made after 1996 and a half or whatever. And, but they'll have a brand new pinball machine and the thing is just as I've also come to find out from talking with other operators who put pinball machines into bars, it's not always a guarantee that it's going to be a huge moneymaker. And generally speaking, unless you have a lot of pinball in the same location, it's not always that powerhouse earning thing. Now, yes, there are exceptions, especially if you're in Chicago or if you're in the Pacific Northwest, then then sure you do want to have more pinball machines. But even then, stuff like this would be very beneficial, and again, cost less than a pinball machine does, and pretty likely from the earnings that I've heard on Perfect Four that it's going to pay itself off a lot faster. Now, this game is going to be showing up at IAAPA 2025, which is the trade show we're going to get into right now. If you're not familiar with IAAPA, it's a giant trade show. It's kind of like the E3 of the amusement industry. When I say amusement, that covers not just arcades, but anything that's like public entertainment, like a theme park. Even museums can kind of be considered along those lines sometimes, but just any sort of commercialized public entertainment is generally something that falls under the umbrella of amusement. And like you can put an arcade machine in most of those places too. And so IAPA is coming up in less than a month from now in Orlando, Florida. It always happens the week before Thanksgiving. I do wish they would move it to like October instead, because the problem is if you're trying to do business at the show, most of the time people are like, "Well, let's talk after the show," and then of course after the show it's Thanksgiving, and then after Thanksgiving it's the holidays, and so sometimes you don't get things done until January if you're lucky that anybody remembers things, unless it's a deal you're able to get finalized right at the show. But anyway, and it's also a heavy travel time right before then too. But anyways, it's a huge trade show. It's like the E3 of the industry, and this is where a lot of the latest, greatest arcade machines are going to be showing up. Some of them will be ready to ship already, like Perfect Pour. Pabst Blue Ribbon Edition, sorry, as well as some other games that we're going to talk about now. And so this is going to serve as kind of a preview to the preview. I'm going to do a big live stream preview. We're also going to do a big blog post about the stuff that's coming to IAAPA 2025. And I will be at the show to record all that stuff. But let's get into a few extra previews. And so first off, let's get to Sega Amusements. And so this is where you get the Sega name on stuff. Now, this particular post that they released this morning is focused on their redemption content, and so I know that that might not interest everybody. Just giving it a quick mention here, such as their new High Five Tickets game, which controls 5 claws at the same time, and I guess you're trying to grab the balls, and depending on the color of the balls, they're RFID tagged, and that will determine how many tickets you get. They also have a new modular crane system called the Minikube Prize World, which allows you to build all sorts of interesting structures based on these different cranes. And then they also have different styles. It's not just claws. So I guess I shouldn't say crane. I think it was it's a Minikube Prize World, not mini crane. Sorry. But they have like a rotary style, a peg style, a capsule style, and a claw style. I think there was one other one that I'd seen somewhere, but anyways, they also will have their crane machines. They're very popular. These would be considered peg merchandisers. Skillful, and they got a new prize merchandiser, which many of you may be familiar with, Keymaster out there, which also did have some issues with on the legal side of things. But they do address that right here, where it says, as well as these, check out Key Magic, the ultimate time-based skill. That's the keyword there, skill prize arcade game. So this would be skill-based as opposed to chance-based, which that was the problem with Keymaster and some jurisdictions of the world. And so this is look, I would assume the gameplay is going to be pretty much the same thing. You just got to get the key through the hole, but now it's skill based instead. Then the other redemption games they're going to have on hand, they're electromechanical on target shooting game, both the 4 player, 2 player version, Big Sea Fishing, which was released earlier this year, Capto Cranes, Zombies Ready Daddy Go. But keep in mind, this is not everything that Sega is bringing to IAAPA. We know for certain that they're going to have My DX, the rhythm game sensation that's been shipping for a little bit already, a few months or a couple months, or maybe just a month. I can't remember for sure. It wasn't very clear as to when they started really shipping, or officially shipping, but I think it was Round One USA in Burbank that got some. They'll also have a standard version of Apex Rebels, and I think it was called Speed Rider 40X, a motorcycle racing game with some really hot graphics. And then there's another racing game which I saw a small preview of. Didn't see the cabinet image, but I saw the name of it, and so it's a name that some people will recognize. I'm pretty sure, not all of you will recognize, but interesting new model for this game, and so we'll have to wait until they officially unveil it. And then also earlier this week, or sorry, yesterday, from when I'm recording this, Raw Thrills did an unveil on some new stuff. And so let's start off with Jackpot Racer. This is their new Videmption game. I like to call them Videmption instead of Video Redemption. Just rolls off the tongue a little better, where you are playing a game that's kind of similar to Superbikes 3, but it has shorter tracks. The games are last roughly about a minute, a little over a minute, and so the entire point is for where you're racing against an AI or CPU controlled biker that's labeled as the Jackpot Racer. If you can beat that racer, then you win the jackpot of tickets. If not, you still win tickets, you just don't win as much. And I think there was something about like coins that you can pick up along the road to grab them. Like here's a representation of the jackpot racer. It's this kind of pinkish ghost that you race against, and there's only 4 tracks on that, and it does have 2 screens. This is the first time that Raw Thrills has done 2 screens on a motorcycle racer. Of course, they're the ones that came up with the idea of doing this with arcade games in the first place with Fast and Furious Arcade back in 2023. This also has wind effects. They've also changed the bike a little bit. Instead of having the opaque black plastic for the wheels and the seat. Now it looks like it's a translucent sort of thing, and so there'll be embedded LED or RGB LEDs to light that up and draw attention from far away. Now, if an operator buys two of them, then they'll get this big marquee as well as the LED. I think they said it was a dot matrix display to show what the jackpot is. But if you buy just a single one, it doesn't come with any marquee like that. The marquee is basically just digital built into this top thing here instead. So if you want that nicer look, you want to buy two. Of course, you usually want to buy two racing games anyways. And this can link up to 8. That would be quite an impressive thing to see for Redemption Center, is 8 of those in one. And so that one's in production now, and so it should be showing up pretty soon, about the same price as the Superbikes 3, from what I was told. Then we have Godzilla Kaiju Wars Deluxe. And so, what has changed about this one? And we talked about this a little bit. It was at GTI Asia China Expo back in September, where it debuted and it actually launched first in China. But in addition to not having a VR headset and flipping the seats around and the control panel around to face the dual screens, is that they've actually added more content to this. And so, where if you were to play the VR version from start to finish, it's something around 15, 16 minutes, maybe 17 on the long end, whereas this version it's somewhere around 32 to 36 minutes depending. So they've thrown a lot more content into it, and they've also added a redemption mode. So that if your center is really into tickets, you can still offer tickets with that. But with the redemption mode off, it's just going to play like a straight arcade game, kind of like a Jurassic Park arcade and all that stuff. And in fact, I would say that the game length now is comparable to like Jurassic Park Arcade or Aliens Armageddon. And could this still earn just like those games? Absolutely. My Jurassic Park is still usually my top number 2 or number 3 earning game in my arcade, and I've heard of plenty other arcades where Jurassic Park still just slays it or whatever. I don't know what the kids say these days because I'm an old fogey, but uh, um, either way, it makes a lot of money. Halo Fireteam Raven does really well. I expect this to make money for a long time, and that's a nice benefit to arcades. Is that oftentimes with console games, they can have a fairly short shelf life. Sure, that can happen with an arcade game too, but it's not as common to come across a console game that's still getting played 10 years later. I mean, sure, there are stuff like Minecraft and Fortnite and League of Legends and stuff like that. But yeah, when the arcade business, where there's far fewer releases than what you get out on home consoles, it's more impressive when you have several games that can still be making good money 10 years after they've been released, or even further down the road than that. Mario Kart Arcade GPDX is another great example of that. But anyways, this one's going to be reaching production in December. It's possible, but unlikely that you would come across this at an arcade out there in December. It's more likely about January or so, but it just depends on shipping times, who ordered what when, all that sort of stuff. And this one's price, I was told, is slightly above a Fast and Furious Arcade Deluxe, which those were around 25,000. I didn't get an exact number on whether this lands. It sounded like it might be closer to 30, but it could be under 30. And that also might depend on who your distributor is that you go with. But that's still cheaper than the VR version by a few $1,000s, possibly several $1,000s there, and and nice benefit to have the redemption there if that's your thing. I should have been playing this trailer as I was talking about it. I don't remember Raw Thrills exactly going this far on like the CG effects with their trailers before, but that's what they went with here. and it's just touching on all the little things that you would get with this one. And this is designed for guys like me who own and operate an arcade, and that's why it has things like dimensions on there, because that's something we need to care about. How can I fit this in my venue? But then also knowing what some of the other features might be. Does have all the same levels, but again, they've just added a lot more stuff to it. And so I'll be filming this at IAAPA where we'll have plenty of time to play it. I'll see if I can play through the entire thing. That would be good. And yeah, that one's coming pretty soon. And I'm happy about that. As somebody who's just not been into VR, and we've been having discussion with about this on the Arcade Heroes Discord. I think I've done a video about this where I've talked about the decline of VR arcades in recent times, and I know there's still a few people out there that get upset in hearing that, but it's like it's objectively obvious at this point that the steam is gone from the whole VR fad. And to me, there's a lot of similarities to laser discs. Now, granted, to be fair, VR has lasted a lot longer than Laserdisc ever lasted. But like when you talk to people that operate arcades, particularly arcade technicians, they all pretty uniformly hate VR because of just the amount of headaches, the amount of time, the amount of money that they've had to spend on keeping those things working. And that's what screams Laserdisc to me. That was what killed the Laserdisc, was just they were very unreliable, broke down all the time, and had problems. No, that's not to say that every single VR arcade game had those problems. Like I know VR Rabbids was pretty reliable, and Godzilla. I've heard that at first it wasn't, but then became more reliable as they got that on. Figured those things out as well as King Kong. But still, it's just to me, this was self-evident. The first time I saw an unattended VR arcade system, the first thing that popped into my mind was kids slamming a light gun on the floor, which I've seen hundreds of times over the years. And it's like anytime you put stuff into the public, it's going to get used and abused. But imagine having that sort of abuse where somebody just doesn't give a crap about how much this thing costs, and how rough they handle it, and then putting it on their face, and then when they're done, chucking it off or whatever. And now I know it's not always the VR headset itself that gets damaged. It can be the straps, it can be the cabling, it can be all sorts of things. But either way, it just introduced a plethora of issues that don't exist with non-wearable games. And so that's where it just years ago when I was covering IAAPA and starting to watch the rise of VR, we had something like 80 companies that were had some sort of VR product at their booth. A lot of them VR was the only thing that they focused on. Now we're looking at companies in the single digits that have that. And so if that doesn't scream that it's dead, I don't know what does. But I know there's still some people financially invested in that, and so they'll probably be pretty angry at me saying that. But hey, come at me with a better counterpoint. I mean, how do you explain that drastic decline? And you have to admit there are inherent problems with VR, whether you like it or not. And because I think a lot of the champions of VR have refused to acknowledge that, it's been holding back ways to maybe find a way around it. But of course, I don't know that there really is a way to get around wearable tech and putting it in the hands of the public. Really, that what I would prefer to see is more mixed reality type things with projection mapping, and trying to create immersive experiences that way. Anyways, too much rambling on VR there. Other things that Roth Hills will also have an update for Angry Birds Boom, which adds leaderboards, and where you'll also be able to now have fixed and variable ticket payouts. But the leaderboard sounds like it would be great for having it on non-ticket mode, so it's just for points. And then the Wizard of Oz also has a new model where, for locations that don't have vaulted ceilings, which there's plenty out there, where oftentimes when they buy an arcade machine, they have to remove the marquee from it because it just can't fit in the location. Now they have a Wizard of Oz. This is totally a redemption game. There's no non amusement mode or non-ticket mode available on it. If you have those shorter ceilings, you can get this smaller model. I think they said it was something like 10 feet tall total, to be able to get those benefits of that game there. But anyways, that's the stuff that's coming up. Again, we will have a full IAAPA preview coming soon, within the next few weeks. There's going to be a lot more news. I'll try and see if I can get to it sooner so that we don't have to cram so much into one video. But if you have any comments, thoughts, things that you want me to focus on at the show, let me know in the comments below. Obviously, I will be focusing a lot on the latest, greatest games from Raw Thrills and Sega and Bandai Namco and etc. And anything else that I come across. But I also like to focus on things that may not be attached to a big company name. If there's any indies there, like I'll show the Perfect Pour, the new version there. Then I can't remember if I said that that's at the ABS Company's booth, where you'll also have Dr. Pepper Soda Slam there from Alan One, and similar gameplay on both. Although I'll probably be able to compare there the depth of gameplay in Perfect Pour versus the FEC ticket style gameplay of Dr. Pepper Soda Slam. But anyways, let me know what interests you the most, what you want to see out of IAAPA 2025, and we'll see you on the next video.